Acrophobia, the fear of heights. Arachnophobia, the fear of spiders. Aerophobia, the fear of flying. Samhainophobia, the fear of Halloween, which I hope you don't have, because this is a special Halloween episode of Remember, all about taphophobia, the fear of being buried alive, and the story of the lady with the ring.
I just think it's a perfectly valid thing to be worried about.
It's a valid fear. Being buried alive would be horrible.
I think I have the forearm strength to get out of that situation.
Well, only one way to find out.
Just bury me and I'll be at the bar by last orders.
And if not, then
come and get me.
It's too late, probably. Welcome to Remember, a very special travel jet lag episode of Remember, the show about history, mystery. And did you know that doctors used to be able to declare someone officially dead without ever having seen the body?
Yeah, they're probably dead. That's what I heard. I heard a rumor that they were dead.
So yeah, they probably are. They're dead. Send them off to the cemetery. Do you feel dead today, Matthew?
I do a little bit, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
How about you?
I feel less dead than I have in recent days. So for everyone listening or watching on YouTube, we have both been traveling in Germany. Keep an eye out on our Instagram for some photos of that. I am now back in the U.S. Matthew is still traveling right now for his travel YouTube channel, Yesland Travel. So there's no video of our faces for this episode because we just can't.
And I went on an accidental 50-mile bike ride today.
It's a whole thing. Maybe you wish that you were just now peacefully laid to rest in a
God, yes.
So yeah, you used to be able to declare someone officially dead without ever having seen the body, and wouldn't you know it, this sort of thing led to a lot of people being scared about possibly being buried alive.
It makes sense. This would happen to people. That they would catatonic or anything like that, and they'd just be like, yeah, just put him in the ground.
They must be dead, just go on and bury him. It's like, but what if they weren't? What if they weren't dead?
The doctors never get found out, do they? Because if they weren't dead when they went in, it doesn't take long.
They'll be dead at some point. And they're like, yeah, they might as well be dead. So sure, bury him. This is what we will refer to for the rest of the episode as premature burial. And it is pretty awful. But you know what hasn't been premature? Our introduction.
I was going to say a much worse joke than that.
Arriving at just the right time is me, Paula, the one who did the research this week. And with me, of course, is the man who knows. It's all in the timing. Mr. Matthew, time waits for no one. Time after time. Let's do the time warp again. Jude.
Let's just give that a moment, everyone.
Just give it a moment. Let it sink in.
See if it gets better with just a minute.
Everything gets a little better with time. Ooh, I didn't even write that one in. I just thought of it.
It's also not true.
Well, let's just...
Like a sandwich.
Okay, fair point. A carton of milk. Let's go on a journey to Europe.
Oh, let's.
Where I just was. Back through history to some point in time between the 1300s and the 1700s.
I'll be honest, that's not very specific for a history podcast, Paula, but...
It's a wide berth of years.
You've given it a wide swath of time.
Just a huge amount of time that this could be happening in.
Then what happened?
And even, well, we could be almost anywhere. Maybe we're in England, or maybe we're in Scotland, or France,
Ooh.
Italy, the Netherlands, possibly Germany. We could be in any number of countries. But one thing is certain, Matthew. A woman is dead.
Oh, dear.
And on her hand is a ring. The lady's husband doesn't want her to be buried with this ring for fear it will motivate grave robbers to desecrate her resting place.
Who's doing that, really? Desecrating graveyards?
I mean, this was a legitimate concern, grave robbers, which we'll talk about later. But yeah, there were a lot of people digging up bodies, not just for the valuables they were buried with, but for the bodies themselves. Remember Michelangelo?
Wanted to paint some bodies. He wanted to get to see what the sinews were doing.
Needed to learn anatomy. Only one way to do that. This lady's hand, of course, is swollen, and the ring she wears can't be removed. She needs to be buried quickly to contain whatever disease killed her. Otherwise, it might spread. So her husband allows her to be buried wearing her ring. And sure enough, grave robbers visit that very same night.
Those dastardly no good do no gooders.
Those dastardly no good do no gooders. They dig up her coffin.
Arseholes.
Those assholes. They try to remove the ring for themselves. But they also can't get it off her finger. So what do you think they do?
I would put the dead finger in my mouth to lubricate it.
That's horrible. That's horrible. I hate that answer. They do not do that.
What do they do?
They, in a more traditional strategy here,
I feel like my strategy would work just as equally as any other.
they take out a knife and they cut off her finger.
Oh, that makes more sense.
But to their horror, she begins bleeding.
It's not just you cut off a finger, though. That's not like something that's easy to do.
Yeah, it's not like slicing through a stick of butter. There's a bone in there.
There's a whole doodad in there.
There's a whole doodad in there, the scientific
Sorry,
word.
did you say she starts screaming?
She starts bleeding and sits up suddenly in her grave, alive.
That's incorrect.
No.
I bet they don't wait around to find out what's going on. Because I tell you what, if that was me, I'd be in a different town.
Yeah, they sure don't. They run off, terrified, as they should be. And she drags herself out of the ground and walks home. When she arrives there, she knocks on the door. Hearing her knock, her husband, the widower, says to his children, "If I didn't know any better," but if you imagine it in some variety of European accent, "If I didn't know any better."
Hold on. Go on, what's the whole phrase?
"If I didn't know any better, I'd say that sounds like your mother's knock."
Here we go. If I didn't know any better, I'd be saying that was your mother's knock.
Oh, that's very good. That is some sort of European accent.
Thank you.
And then he opens the door and is reunited with his prematurely buried wife back from the grave. Can we just pause for a moment to talk about the idea that someone's knock might sound individual to them?
I mean, 100%. That makes perfect sense to me.
Does it really? Does it legitimately make perfect sense to you?
Yes, absolutely. Some people have a signature knock. Do you not?
I just knock on a door, and I don't think anyone should be able to know that it's me just from my knock.
Yeah, but do you give it a little flourish? Do you give it a da-da-da-da-da? Or did you give it a da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da?
Maybe the mom, maybe this particular woman always knocked like this.
Yeah, that'll do it.
He was like, "If I didn't know any better, I'd say that sounds like your mother's knock."
I've taken to just scratching on doors.
Oh no, like a cat or a dog.
Just scratching because it unsettles the person answering. I did this very recently in Germany, and you were there, Paula, and Dave did say it was unnerving. It's not a nice sound.
It's not a nice sound. Don't scratch on a door.
The continual drone of a scratch at the door.
Oh, it's actually giving me like the heebie-jeebies, honestly.
And then when that doesn't work, I go, meow. Like that.
And we're like, "What? A cat?" And then we open them, we're like, "Oh, just a man." There's versions of this story all over Europe. In the German version, there's also this bit about the husband saying, "You can't be my wife. She's dead. It's more likely that the horses would leave their stable and run upstairs than my wife be alive."
And then all of a sudden, let me guess, the horses just run up.
Yeah, all of a sudden, there's the sound of horses upstairs. Yes.
Yeah, that'll do it for you.
And they're like, "What?"
As soon as the horses started moving, I'd say something like, "I have more chance of me getting a blowjob off 65 beautiful maidens."
You're like, "Worth a try."
Worth a try.
The wife's like, "Actually, I'm going to go back. I'm going to go back to my grave now." That's how you're going to
I'm
be.
going back to death.
There is actually a building in Cologne, or Köln.
We've been there.
Yeah.
Köln.
Köln. That's a terrible German pronunciation, but forgive me. So yeah, in that place, there is a building commemorating a supposed example of this story actually happening. So if while you're in Cologne, you look up in front of the Richmodis house on Richmondstrasse, you'll see the sculpture of 2 horse heads in the window
Oh,
of
really?
the tower of that building. Yes.
I would be there. I'd be looking up at that going, is that 2 horses coming out of that? What the hell's the story behind that?
And there was actually...
Some crazy German maniac?
They existed there before, and then I believe during... don't quote me on this. I believe it was during World War II. It got destroyed, of course, and has been redone. So what's there now is not the original horse heads commemorating the story, but they are there.
Why have we never gone to see that? I'm going to go look at
It's
that.
because the one time we were in Cologne, we didn't know this story yet.
We did go to the cathedral, and let me tell you about Cologne Cathedral. As a British person, I've been to many cathedrals in my life, and I wasn't excited about Cologne Cathedral. And then I got there and realised it was possibly the most impressive building on the face of the earth.
It's incredible.
I do not say that lightly. I think it's probably in the top 5 most impressive buildings on earth. It's incredible.
It's pretty great. We were there before we started making Remember, but I do have pictures of our visit there. And if I can remember, I will post them on our Instagram account. How about that? So, are these stories just folk tales? Yeah, were women truly being buried alive with their jewelry all over Europe? Well, here's the thing. I do know a true story of a woman being buried alive in Basingstoke, England in 1674. Have I said that right? Basingstoke?
Yeah, Basingstoke. That sounds right to me.
Great.
What did you think? What's the alternative pronunciation?
I don't know. Basingstoke? I don't know. There's no telling with English towns, Matthew.
Everyone always says, like, Leominster. It's like, it's Leominster. It's just, there's no O.
I mean, there is an O, is the thing. There is an O.
British pronunciations are not fair on anyone else. They're just not fair. And they're not fair even if you're not from that town. I was like in a place, I was like, what's this place called? Slaithwaite? And my friend Dan looked at me and went, it's pronounced Slowit. I was like, well, why is it spelt Slowit?
Yeah, strange language.
Beautiful language. The language of Shakespeare. The language of Chaucer. The language of Matthew Jude.
So let's go to Basingstoke, England in 1674. This story doesn't involve a ring, but there is a blue plaque in the cemetery to acknowledge what happened there. For those who don't know, Matthew, do you want to explain the significance of a blue plaque?
A blue plaque in the UK is, I forgot what company does it. It might be just the National Heritage Society or something. They go around and they say, Millicent Fawcett lived here from this date to this date. I'm saying Millicent Fawcett, she was part of the suffragette movement, and I just happened to have seen her plaque very recently. And it'll be like, the person who invented this lived in this place at this time. Or like there's one that for Benjamin Franklin, for instance, because he was lived in the UK.
He loved the UK.
They found a lot of bones in his cellar, Paula, so whatever he was doing here wasn't good.
He was being a cannibal, perhaps.
I think he was doing some Masonic nonsense, frankly.
Frankly, Mr. Franklin? That sounds like a future episode that you should research and host.
We're not doing this as an improv exercise, Paula. That we come up with the episode title first and I have to go find some. But yeah, blue plaques commemorate historical events and people at locations. And it's great when you're walking around the UK because you can go blue plaque hunting and go, oh, this person lived there and this person lived there.
Yeah.
And sometimes there's like someone's put a blue plaque up outside of like David Cameron's house and it's saying all the terrible things that he did.
So there is a blue plaque in the cemetery. It is possible that it's just the color blue. And I've read too much into the fact that it's blue, but I believe it is a proper blue plaque. And it reads, Mrs. Blunden, wife of William Blunden, Maltster, was, not monster, let me say it again, Maltster, was buried alive in this cemetery in July 1674. Parliament fined the town for its negligence.
That's adding insult to injury, though.
They're like, oh no.
No one means to bury someone alive.
Well, you haven't heard this story yet. And I think there probably was some negligence involved in this one. I'll let you be the judge of that.
I would like to be the judge of everything.
You'll be doing some judging. Side note, If you have intense fears of being buried alive or of claustrophobia, you might want to skip ahead a few minutes in the episode because this is kind of horrible.
What about me?
You can't skip. I'm so sorry, Matthew.
I'm stuck in this. I don't like the idea.
No, it's horrible. And I wrote that little warning because as I was typing this out, I am claustrophobic and I was like, this is making me feel ill. So
You're terribly claustrophobic. And you're scared of heights.
yes, that's why if you'll notice the fears I listed at the beginning of the episode, I did choose some that were personal.
You're also a perfectionist.
Perfectionophobia. Oh, are you just going to list all of my negative qualities?
Well, what else does your therapist say about you?
That's confidential.
Great butt?
No. My therapist has never seen my butt because it's all teleconference. Alice Blunden and her husband William.
We just firstly, quickly, just before we start this, Blunden sounds like someone was hastily making up a name.
I don't know. They're people. They live in England. England's like London. They're British people who live somewhere like kind of London. Blunden. It's Blunden.
It sounds like Red Dwarf.
It does. Alice Blunden and her husband William were fairly well-to-do. He was a malt dealer, and Alice, and not the like milkshake kind, alcohol. He was a malt dealer, and Alice is described as being a larger woman, probably because they could afford to indulge in food and drink. Apparently, Alice enjoyed drinking and over-drinking, and one day, while William was out of town on business, she had, just a little too much. The beverage she was enjoying was poppy water, or poppy tea.
That sounds like it's got opium in it.
It sure does. So I did a little rabbit hole, if you will, when looking into this so I could try and describe it properly. But poppy seeds themselves are not, do not have opiates in them, but it's what's on the outside of the shells of them. And so when they are dried, like they are dried, unwashed poppy seeds and stems that are then soaked in water, the opiates on the outside of the seeds are then infused in the water and become a nice cup of morphine. Alice had so much that she fell unconscious, so deeply that her family was convinced she was dead. The doctor was called.
I mean, you've got to be really unconscious for people to think you're dead. What about breathing?
She's basically in like a morphine coma. The doctor was called and administered what was at the time a highly scientific and reliable mirror test. So he held a mirror under her nose.
To see if she was breathing?
Yeah, and there was no proof of breath, according to him. Perhaps because her coma was so deep that she was breathing so slowly that it didn't create any...
Yeah, you just catch it at the wrong time.
Fog on the mirror, yeah. So he declared her dead. William was contacted. He was out of town, and he wanted them to wait to bury her until he returned from his trip. But it was July, and they had no way of properly storing her larger body. They were worried about decomposition and disease, right? So they just went ahead and buried her immediately because they're like, we can't fit her in anything that will keep her from not, forgive my crassness, beginning to rot. So we'll just have to bury her. They also did this in such a hurry that they did not make a coffin specifically for her. They used a pre-made coffin that she did not fit in. Yeah, I don't want to go into too much detail. This is part of what's horrifying to me in the claustrophobia sense. She's like...
I mean, she would have had no space at all in there then.
Literally crammed into this coffin. They used like sticks to push her arms into it. It's horrible. It's horrible, and that's all I'm going to say about it.
That'll suffocate her more than anything else.
Yeah.
God, this is already horrendous.
It's horrifying. So after she was buried, some schoolboys went to their headmaster to say they heard shouts and banging coming from her fresh grave.
Oh, God.
Do you think the headmaster believed them, or do you think they got punished for telling lies?
I think he believed them, obviously.
Oh, they got punished for telling lies. But like a day later, he was like, maybe I should just walk by there. And he heard the sounds himself.
A day later?
Yeah. Here's where the negligence comes in. So like a day later, he goes and he hears the sounds himself. and he needs to get someone to exhume the coffin, but not just anyone can do it, and they have to wait.
No, just start digging.
It's not like an immediate...
You hear screaming from a grave, start digging.
They're like, I'm going to look like a grave robber. I can't just do this. So I had to wait to get a proper person to come out and exhume the coffin. By the time they do, they find Alice unconscious, but battered and bruised, like she had been struggling to break free from her too small casket.
God, that's the worst thing I've ever heard.
Thinking, well, she's definitely dead this time. They reburied her. But they said to the gravedigger, hey, stand guard, just in case, right? Just stand guard in case she needs to be dug out again. But it started raining. And I mean, you can't expect anyone in England to tolerate any amount of rain. It's just so unusual there. So it's understandable that he left to go keep dry in the pub. So the next morning, they check back in on her, uncovering her grave and opening the coffin. And this time, she really had died, but not before. She'd torn her burial shroud to shreds trying to escape one last time.
This is the worst story I've ever heard in my whole life.
It's horrible. The case was brought to court, and the town was fined for their negligence.
Why did they rebury her?
They were like, she must be dead. But then they were like, not sure enough. They were like, but someone should stand guard just in case. It's like, why not just like wait? Again,
She was buried alive twice.
So, based on that, maybe people were right to be scared of premature burial happening to them.
Especially if it's raining.
Yeah, especially if it's raining. And you know what it's always doing in England? Raining.
It be raining here, Paula.
So Lord Chesterfield of England.
The Lord Chesterfield of England?
The Lord Chesterfield of England. This is a historical figure of some sort. I had to look him up. Do you know who Lord Chesterfield is?
I'm sure he did something wonderful with the money he was given by his father.
He did, yes. Oh, yeah. Just politics and things and stuff. Look him up. Google him, everyone. Just Google him. But he's a historical figure who has an important quote here. Quote, all I desire for my own burial is not to be buried alive. So he was scared.
It's a reasonable ask, Paula. It's not asking too much.
Yeah. All I want is to not be buried alive. You know what? You're not wrong. That's a pretty reasonable ask. Hey, y'all, just don't bury me alive.
If I'm dead, great. If I'm not dead, cool your jets.
Cool your jets. Cool thy jets. George Washington, a notable historical figure from America.
The George Washington?
The George Washington.
George Washington?
Yeah, the very same.
How'd you say it?
He's George Washington.
George Washington?
Washington.
Washington. What am I saying?
Washington.
Well, that's what you said.
No, I said Washington.
No, I said Washington. You've been saying Washington this whole time.
All right. Well, here's what he said. Have me decently buried, but do not let my body be put into a vault in less than 2 days after I am dead. He was also scared.
Everyone is nervous about this.
The composer, Chopin, said, swear to make them cut me open so that I won't be buried alive.
Yeah, kill me before I go to my grave. Honestly, you know what I mean? At least.
Alfred Nobel of the Nobel Prize said, it is my express wish that following my death, my veins shall be opened, and when this has been done and competent doctors have confirmed clear signs of death, my remains shall be cremated.
These people know what's going on. It's like, look, people being getting buried alive, especially women.
People be getting buried alive. Notice no women are quoted here, but I think that has more to do with historical records.
Sign of the times.
So it's really that competent doctor's part from Alfred Nobel's quote that's important. So it used to be that people could be declared dead and buried without a death certificate or without a trained doctor examining them.
Well, look, Paula.
Yeah?
Sometimes there's only one doctor in town, and he's busy.
He's busy, and also...
He's at lunch. If I have to go look at this, my sandwich is going to be soggy by the time I get back.
So yeah, they're dead. Just stick them in the ground.
Put them in a grave.
Even if they did look at them, people didn't know yet the scientific signs of death. The most reliable sign was actual decay of the body.
Well, the most reliable sign is, like, if the head's missing.
True.
in half. Those type of things. Cannonball inside. Those are the things that I'm looking for.
It was suggested that people actually be held in hospitals for the dead, aka asylums for doubtful life, so that supposed dead people could be observed until they started to decompose.
That's an even worse place to wake up.
Yeah, can you imagine? You wake up, at least you're not buried, but you're surrounded by actual dead people.
Just surrounded in a room full of decomposition and death.
I think very few people who were held in these, I think like basically no one was ever came back to life in one of these hospitals for the dead. Like it just didn't happen.
The thing is though, is we have no idea how many people have been buried alive. It could be a big number.
I think it's probably not, while not obviously unheard of, I really don't think it was as common as people were afraid that it was.
I actually, it's how I want to be killed.
Is by being buried alive?
I want to be buried alive and left to my own devices. I think if I really want it, I'll get out. And if I don't, then I don't.
If you deserve to live, then I think you'll figure out a way. You know what I mean?
If I deserve to live, Paula, God will open the grave.
Get to digging. A society for the prevention of people being buried alive was formed and campaigned for improvements in the process of proper death certificates, as well as creating safety coffins. So it's hard to know how many of these coffins were actually made or used, but a lot of ideas were designed. Some had pipes sticking out of the coffin to allow a person trapped inside to breathe. They might be rigged with strings attached to bells outside the coffin that could ring if the body inside began to move, which actually was kind of an issue because as bodies go through like rigor mortis and then the rest of the process of
being dead,
decomposing, bodies do move. So sometimes movement can happen that might trigger a bell ringing, and it's not because a person is alive, but
yeah, that makes sense.
There were vaults with wheels on the inside of the doors, like to open the door. So a person waking up inside could open the door themselves and just climb out. Or, maybe just bury your loved one with a trumpet, a crowbar, or a shovel, just in case.
I would like to bury you with the trumpet because you can play the French horn.
I can play the trumpet.
Yeah, but...
And also the French horn, but I can play the trumpet, so...
With knowing nothing about instruments, saying you can play the French horn sounds better than the trumpet?
Bury me with the French horn, then.
Well, I don't... Do you know what? You'll get a harmonica and that's it. With that attitude.
How about just a kazoo? Just a little kazoo.
Oh, God, kill whoever's in that grave. It's so annoying.
So some of these designs for the coffins were very intricate. The patent for a device for indicating life in buried persons states, quote, "It will be seen that if the person buried should come to life, a motion of his hands will turn the branches of the T-shaped pipe upon or near which his hands are placed. A marked scale on the side of the top of the coffin indicates movement of the T, and air passively comes down the pipe. Once sufficient time has passed to assure that the person is dead, the device can be removed." And in our YouTube version of this, I will include some pictures of these patents and designs.
Here's my plan, Paula. Tell me what you think. I would like to be buried, but underneath my coffin is... So there's a lever in the coffin. That's important information first.
Uh-huh.
I pull the lever.
Okay.
If I pull the lever, which can only be pulled if I remove a pin, thus cannot be accidentally pulled, the bottom of my coffin falls out, and the chute that I go down leads me right back home.
Oh, so a little like secret tunnel from your grave to like the basement of your house.
Yeah. Then I just walk up and they go, "Hey, honey, I'm alive. Who's this man in the house?"
Just the neighbor coming over to help me fix the oven.
Why is he inside you then?
That's the oven.
That's all very well and good. Why are you fornicating with him?
A patent for a different casket details a motion-triggered, clockwork-driven fan to force fresh, breathable air into the coffin, and a battery-powered alarm a spring-loaded rod to raise up feathers or other signals that life is inside, also a viewing tube so that a lamp could be lowered down into the coffin to be able to see the dead person's face, to make sure they're really dead. Really, really dead.
No, thank you.
No, thank you. You don't want to see the dead person's face. But what if they're not dead and their face is moving?
Paula, I can't wait for you to watch Father Ted with me at some point, because there's a really great futuristic coffin that they talk about in that show. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
Father Ted, one of the greatest comedies of all time.
All right, we'll have to check it out.
It's just so good.
Would you be buried? There are coffins now, more modern ones that you can like put a video screen in so that like you can basically Zoom call into the coffin.
I just don't want to see anyone that is dead, especially if I love them.
But what if they're not dead and that's the whole point? Then you can see that they're not dead. Then you can save them.
Yeah, I'd rather just not know.
Oh no. Well, I hope I'm never buried alive and you're like, I would just rather not know if Paula needs saving.
I think you would be able to get out. You've got great grip.
I don't know if it's the grip that's going to help me get out of the...
Yeah, but I think you could jiggle the coffin lid.
Maybe so. Just don't seal it too tightly.
Paula is much stronger than she looks. I'll just throw that right out there.
So ultimately, I think people probably were justified in some of their fears of premature burial.
Absolutely, they were justified.
I mean, especially during events like disease outbreaks, right? Where a lot of people were dying and there was concern about speedily removing contagious bodies.
Or everyone being addicted to opium. Yeah.
Yeah, and being like, they sure do look dead. But tales, folklore, like the lady with the ring, stoked fires and fears that premature burial could happen to anyone, anytime, whether or not that was actually accurate.
I choose to believe
that you could be buried alive at any moment.
Yeah, I choose to believe that's still possible.
Oh, what a horrible thing to believe.
I will be ruminating on it from now until the day I die.
Well, now they have to actually have like someone proper has to like look at you and declare you dead.
Do they do it really? Do they actually do it?
Maybe there's like, I don't know, I'm tired. This is my 5th body today. Sure, they're dead.
I've been working 16-hour shifts. They're dead. I need to go home.
They're dead. I feel dead, so they probably are too.
Paula, this was truly horrifying and perfectly acceptable for Halloween. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Remember. Paula, thank you so much for doing the research for this. I imagine at times you didn't enjoy it.
It was a bit macabre, yes. But I did it to myself. I chose. No one forced me to do this topic. So you reap what you sow.
Next time, I want you to do about the World Exposition. What's it called? What are those things called?
The World's Fair?
Like a World's Fair. Well, I was using the word exposition. Exhibition.
Exhibition.
That's a long-winded way to talk about a giant sloth. But anyway, thank you so much. We would love it if you would like the show. Please, the best way to help grow a show like this is to tell someone who you think might like it about it. Find an episode that you think might jive with them real well. That's right, I'm saying jive. I'm bringing it back. You don't know how the song goes, Paula. We've been through this.
Driving, get away. I think my second time it was a little better.
I still don't know what it is. Tell them all about it and send them a link. And that would just really help us out. Until next time, though, thank you so much for listening. We just appreciate the absolute hell out of you. And we'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Happy Samhain.